Okay, so I think we've opened our doors, so to speak, our virtual doors. I'll just let people start to come on before we absolutely get started in earnest. Welcome everybody from wherever you're joining. We were trying to work out before, whenever we do these webinar events from the UK to the USA, it's always interesting to look at the different time zones. Clearly, we're a little bit less complex than that front from the UK, but whereas obviously over in the States there's all sorts of time zones joining us from 8 in the morning till 11 in the morning and any other time in between. So thank you for making time in your diaries for this conversation. I'll just wait for maybe Mickey to give me the nod when she wants me to start in earnest, and we'll get this show on the road, so to speak. And we've got a great topic for everybody today. I think it's going to generate a lot of debate, which is good. Looking at how we build gender diversity through apprenticeships, incredibly important topic, whether you're whichever side of the pond you happen to be on, or indeed anywhere in the world for that matter. It's always very odd when you have to fill the gaps before you wait to start something and you're a lonely little voice looking at yourself on a camera.
Yeah, Kirstie, I think give it maybe, we've got some 26 participants so far. We had quite a big registration, so let's give it maybe another 1 minute.
Yes, it's still only just gone 4. Yeah, I'm very happy. I'm very happy people are happy to work in semi-silence with me chipping the odd attempt to be witty remark.
I think you're doing a fantastic job.
Oh, Kim, thank you. You come on, great. What I always find with these sort of conversations in this moment, whenever we do our own internal webinars, I always find talking about the weather tends to generate quite a lot of interest. Depending on where people are in the country or the world, that often gets quite a lot of interest going.
So how is your weather over there?
It's a typical November grey wintry day, I'm afraid. It's about to go dark. We're probably about 40 minutes from it going dark.
Okay. Well, it's bright and sunny, and it's a crisp, cool day here in Maryland.
Well, there you go. There you go. I'm always very envious when I speak to people in different parts of the world, and they are clearly having slightly better weather days than we have in the UK. But look, that's not unusual. You don't live in the UK for weather. Let's be honest.
You don't.
Right. I think the participant numbers are going up. I can see that here. I think probably what we'll do, if that's okay, Kim and Mickey, with you, we'll probably get started and just let people join as they come, because we have absolutely now gone past 4 p.m, I think, at UK time anyway. Brilliant. Okay, well, listen, as I said a moment ago, and I'm sure people will be continuing to join us as the afternoon stroke morning continues. Thank you all for joining during what is, we know in the US, America's National Apprenticeship Week. It's great that through our partnership with Franklin Apprenticeships that we now have 2 National Apprenticeship Weeks that we can share together. This one, of course, happening in the US that we're doing right now, and then our own in the UK, which actually will be happening in February next year. So I'm sure we'll think of something to do for then as well, Kim. As I said a moment ago, this is our second joint event with Franklin, where we've been starting to explore the important role apprenticeship play generally in terms of skills, but also in improving diversity within organisations, which was our very first topic when we had the last workshop. And it's because the last one was such a success, we decided to go again. And this time we would dive even more deeply into a specific theme, but more on that later. And you can see on the slide what that theme is going to be about: gender diversity. Just a quick bit of housekeeping before we jump in. We set this up as a Zoom instead of a webinar because that will allow us to go into the breakout sessions that are going to happen in the second half of today. If you're not a panelist, please turn off your cameras for the first half of the event. Also keep your yourself on mute if you can, switch your mics off. But then when we get into the discussion groups this afternoon, then of course you'll be able to flip them back on for that. So I'm just going to say a few words really to set the context for what we're going to be doing here, and I will get to introducing this panel. You can already see them up there, but I will get to introducing this panel, but not for a few more minutes yet. But for those of you who don't know much about City and Guilds, we are a global skills company. We started out 143 years ago in the City of London as a key way to answering the skills crisis that was coming out of what was then the second industrial revolution. Roll on a century or two, and a few more crises, of course, not least the latest one. And we're now squarely in the fourth industrial revolution, probably soon to be the fifth. And here we are, still stronger than ever, delivering on our purpose and delivering that skills impact through our purpose of helping people and economies to prosper. We're also the largest provider of apprenticeships in the UK, and we certify apprenticeships in major occupational areas such as health and social care, construction, engineering, IT, digital, and we also have a significant footprint in leadership and management as well. So we really are genuinely delighted to operate and have this opportunity to continue to collaborate with the Franklin Apprenticeships again. And I think it's a really important dialogue about apprenticeships, both here in the UK and in the US, never more so than ever, due to the global COVID pandemic. Do we absolutely understand that we have a global skills pandemic and the shortages of that we're seeing almost across every sector, almost whoever you talk to in whichever part of the globe for that matter. So the fact that we have employers also joining us today is great, that we're going to have that global skills lens, especially as we have this oxymoron now of jobs without people and people without jobs. After our first event, you told us you did want to have more time for an in-depth discussion on different aspects of diversity. And so we have deliberately chosen gender diversity in apprenticeships as our first in-depth. And I'm sure you can imagine it's also deeply personal for a number of us on this call, certainly for me as a female leader. In fact, the first female leader, CEO leader of City and Guilds in its 143-year history. And actually, as of this month, now joined by our first female chair, the wonderful Dr. Anne Lim. And we also have a very female active president and huge supporter of apprenticeships herself, who is Royal Highness, the Royal Princess Anne. So we score a hat trick now on that front, but it's only taken us 143 years to get there, so don't worry. But sadly though, you know, joking apart, that does make us rather a real anomaly in the UK, because amongst FTSE 100 companies, there are more CEOs named Dave and Steve than there are women and ethnic minority groups combined. That's just not a glib line to get a laugh, because it's actually quite a sad fact, but it is unfortunately a fact, despite, as we're going to hear shortly, some really great best practice that is starting to take place across a range of employers. But why is this? And we're going to explore that with all of you on the call. Well, in part, we know the glass ceiling, non-flexible working practices still make it hard for women to continue to progress in the 21st century. They shouldn't, but they do. And of course, it's women that go on to become mothers and have other caring responsibilities. And it's also because women too often get pigeonholed into careers that allow them less opportunities to go on to lead large organisations from a very early age. Throughout my own career, it's always frustrated me as to why it's so difficult to break down these lasting stereotypes where we send girls into fields like care and hairdressing and teaching, all very important, I hasten to add, and boys into careers in the STEM sectors, finance and technology. We are clearly making progress, but it's slow progress, and there's clearly lots of work for us all to do. So that's why we're here, right? So today's event is in two parts. This next first hour that we've already started, I'm going to be hosting a panel discussion exploring this theme of how do we expand gender diversity across apprenticeships. We've got fantastic representatives from both sides of the pond, including senior talent and apprenticeship professionals, as well as, importantly, some apprentices themselves. I always say you can't have a conversation about apprenticeships and their value without hearing from apprentices as well. So I'm glad that we've got some great apprentices joining us as well. And we're also going to allow some time for some Q&A with you, the audience. So please do post your questions in the chat. And I know that Kim's going to be supporting me through this session and letting me know which questions we want to go on and try and do our best to answer. And then in the second hour, I'm going to be handing over to Kim, who is the CEO of Franklin Apprenticeships. And Kim's going to spend that hour working in smaller breakout sessions that will be hosted by different Franklin representatives. So that way we're going to get a really good diverse set of views and insights coming in to this great discussion. So before we dive in good and proper, I'm just going to hand over to Kim to say a few more words of welcome. Kim, over to you.
Great. Thanks, Kirstie. So thanks everybody for joining today. We are absolutely delighted that you're here celebrating National Apprenticeship Week with us. my journey with apprenticeships actually started after meeting Kirstie and some of her colleagues about 6 years ago. I was on a trade mission in London and learned about apprenticeships for a nonprofit board position that I was supporting. And it made so much sense to me. I could not believe we weren't doing these apprenticeships in a bigger way here in the US. And after about 6 months' time, I actually quit my corporate finance career and started Franklin Apprenticeships. And now we're delivering tech apprenticeship programs for dozens of companies. We've got 6 occupations delivering in, I think it's 12 states. It's not without our challenges, right? And as we look at the journey that the UK has been on around apprenticeships, it really gives us hope, but it also shows us how much more work we have to do. You guys are all familiar. I mean, in the US, the apprenticeship numbers for professional services, let's say, is really low. I mean, if you look at just the tech apprenticeships, we've got under 3,000. That compares to the UK, which has 18,000. And keep in mind, the UK has roughly 1/5 of our population. So we've got a lot of work to do. And, we hear from our clients that one of the top benefits of our programs is that apprenticeships attract a much more diverse talent pool as opposed to their traditional recruitment channels. And we are seeing that every day. The issue is across all the apprentice occupations in the US, only 9% are female. And that compares to 49% female apprentices in the UK. So especially as a woman-owned and led business, we know at Franklin that apprenticeships are a great choice for individuals of all genders, of course, but we really want to do more to help correct that gender imbalance that we're seeing, especially in fields like tech and finance, and as Kirstie mentioned, some of the more traditionally male-focused occupations. And that's why I'm delighted that we have Jade Walker here today. She's one of our pre-apprenticeships. She recently completed a rigorous IBM-Z pre-apprenticeship program with Franklin, and she's actively interviewing for apprenticeship jobs. So you'll hear from her shortly. But as an output of this event today, we want to create a list of ideas, considerations, best practices that we can share with each other and other people that are looking to expand gender diversity through apprenticeships. So in the spirit of having an interactive event here, we're going to kick things off with a quick poll before we get into the panel. Can we put the poll up, please? Great. So the question is, what is the biggest barrier to balancing gender representation in these traditionally male-dominated industries? Is it lack of non-male role models? Is it an industry bias towards recruiting men? Is there a perceived lack of flexibility in these industries, especially, as Kirstie mentioned, for people with caregiving responsibilities? Is there a misperception around what it's like to work in these industries? Is it about social conditioning and the paradigms around appropriate jobs for women versus men, or are there other reasons? We'd love to see your answers.
So Kim, while people are debating on that, I must admit, when I saw that, it's a toughie, because obviously we're only allowed to pick one, right? But there's almost all of them. But you're right, it's going to be fascinating to see what people have really honed in on, isn't it, when we get the results coming out in a minute?
Absolutely agree. I mean, everything on this list is part of the issue, right?
Absolutely, in a big way. Fascinated to hear you talk about only 9% of the US being female participating in apprenticeships. When you consider the size. That said, although yes, we're sitting on a reasonably comfortable 49%, it's still not good enough. And actually, it's taken us a long time to get there. So yeah.
And most of ours, it's because we're so heavy in construction and manufacturing jobs, right? So we're just now getting these newer professional, different types of occupations taking on apprentices.
Exactly. Whereas we have been traditionally more biased in the professional services. And you're absolutely right. That does, just as a poll question has been asking, that does tend to swing the bias a little. So do you think, has the poll closed? Do we know?
I don't see it on the screen.
Oh, here we go.
There we go.
Wow. Okay, interesting. So
you're right. It's across the board, right? I mean, all of these are issues.
Yeah, it is. I mean, and what's interesting is they all sort of come under a bit of a theme, don't they? Which is linked from awareness to role modeling to feeling comfortable. And of course, this perceived lack of actually, I'm really surprised the perceived lack of flexibility in the industries being only at 17%. If I'm being really honest, I would have thought that could have been one of the higher ones, actually, because we do know the lack of flexibility is a big problem that women often cite because of their different roles in society that they have to play. Fascinating. Well, listen, we're going to continue talking about this now, and thanks very much, Kim, for that. I know we'll be coming back to you shortly to set up the panel discussions, but if it's okay now, we'll start going into this panel. You've had the panelists up on the screen for some time, so they probably don't need any intro now, but I'm delighted that we've got such a great range of employer speakers who are coming from themselves a very diverse set of employers with diverse experiences, and I'm sure we're going to be looking at some of these issues that have just come up in the poll. So if it's okay, just to introduce the panel, we've got Diana from Principal Research Associate at the Urban Institute, Mike from NatWest, Christina from T-Mobile, Joanne from Head of Siemens. But as I say, you can see their names and titles up there, and so grateful to you all for joining us. So if you can all switch your cameras on now, perhaps we could take the background slide off so we can see everybody's faces, and let's get stuck into the conversation. And if I may, Diana, I'm going to come to you first, if that's okay, from the Urban Institute to really look at this poll question to start off our conversation right now, which is, what do you feel about those poll results that we've just seen there?
Yeah, I mean, I had the same reaction you did, Kirstie, which is they're all problematic. All of these choices are problematic, and there's even more still, right? I mean, we don't even get at family barriers, really, and sort of the pressures of women by their partners, for example, to take on caregiving, to be that person at home. So, I think all of these findings suggest that there's a lot of issues that women face in terms of these fields. I was struck though that these choices or these poll choices really reflect a life course perspective, right? So at every step of the way, as girls and women kind of progress through life, right? I mean, this socialization piece, right? You have so many girls who kind of in elementary school and middle school express interest in the STEMs, show such like aptitude for STEM, and then somehow along the way, they're discouraged, right? Social scientists refer to the leaky pipeline. So like at every point along the pipeline, women and girls kind of peel off for various reasons, right? Maybe this is, again, preceding even entering the workforce. And then once they enter the workforce, right, are there enough role models there who encourage and mentor and can show them how to succeed and adapt? Are there people who look like them there? I think that representation is huge, hugely important. Are there leaders who are supporting the growth of women at the workplace? Are people being hired? Are they being paid equitably? Are they then able to kind of, move through the ranks? And finally, I think, we don't talk about this very much, open hostility towards women would generally be sort of censured, but microaggressions happen all of the time. And I think any woman on this panel or observing this can speak to some sort of microaggression that they've experienced in their career. So I think all of these factors are relevant. The research really supports this. Not to be a total downer, but one of the things that we don't talk about either is that once you get enough women into a field, wages tend to go down. So this, in 20 years, we can pat ourselves on the back saying we did such a good job getting more women into finance and tech. And now the wages have gone down. So but, on an uplifting note, I think there are a lot of remedies and a lot of ways that we can counter these factors. And I'd love to hear more from others about what they're doing because
great. Thanks, Diana.
Yeah.
Absolutely, because I mean, the great thing about these occasions are the opportunity to also share some best practice and insight. So please do, everybody watching, please do put your questions or even your insights into the chat, and we'll do our best to come back to those. But Diana, you covered brilliantly there the whole gambit, and it is a whole gambit of experiences that I think from a very young age, I mean, from being born almost, where girls are conforming and boys are conforming. And you know, when you were talking, a particular piece of work that myself and the team are looking at the moment, which is women into construction. You know, one of the biggest barriers for women going into construction here in the UK, amongst all the others that do exist, is exactly what you were saying about that prejudice from the men themselves. And I'm not trying to male bash here, by the way, in any, but just the very fact that when they get on the site, they get the kind of aggro they just don't want, or they haven't got a place to go and do their ablutions in the way that men can do. It's just really practical, tangible things that just by putting those things right, the construction industry could open themselves up to so much more richer, diverse talent coming through into the construction industry. So it's frustrating sometimes when we know the answers can be quite simple, because they can be about behaviour, yes, and some investment, like, for example, in decent porta cabin toilets on construction sites. But surely that's not a big thing to ask, right? We know. So it's really fascinating what you were saying there. And you touched on a really interesting point I'd like to come back to with you, if that's okay, Diana, which is, why is it that women, and I think we sort of know the answers, but why is it so many women still select themselves out of careers like technology, finance, and some of those other ones I've just mentioned? What's your take on that?
I mean, I think it's really, again, it's the culture, but it's also sort of these other pressures, the socialization pressure, the pressures from home life. If you are balancing work and family at the same time, you're pretty much taking on, you know, most women take on most of the family responsibilities, for better, for worse. If you don't have an equal partner at home, you might get discouraged from pursuing a career which is also equally demanding, right? And if you look at the end of the day, there are a lot of women. I read this really super discouraging report in the Washington Post here in DC of a CEO of a new tech startup who basically took herself completely out, quit her job, quit her role, because her husband was not taking on parenting responsibilities. And I found that so discouraging, because of this brilliant CEO has to make those same kinds of decisions. What can we expect from somebody sort of, you know, just starting out? So yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I mean, it is, as you say, quite discouraging when you hear those stories, when they're very real, and they'll be multiplying, won't they? And as you say, we then don't have the role models. I can see that it's great to see there's lots of conversation coming through in the chat. So we will get back to making some time to look at that. Thanks very much for that, Diana. I'm going to move to Mike White now, Mike from NatWest, if that's okay. And just to sort of intro, Mike, really, we know that back in 2015, of course, NatWest made a commitment to have at least 30% of women in its global top 3 layers by the end of 2020, and it appears that you've achieved it, and you're intending to have full gender balance by the time you get to 2030. So I think we really now want to hear from you, Mike, about what role has, in your view, I mean, well done, by the way, huge congratulations to NatWest as an employer for achieving that, but what has been the role of apprenticeships or your apprenticeship program in creating the future pipeline for that leadership talent? Appreciate there won't be any of those apprenticeships at that level yet, but how do you see apprenticeships feeding that for the future?
Yeah, and I think as far as the NatWest are concerned, I think we started our apprenticeship program in 2015, and we monitor all our apprentices that started in 2015 and where they get up to, and like I think we've got around 5% of those that started in 2015 who are in managerial roles, and over half of them have been promoted. So we really, I suppose, we have brought in over 2,000 apprentices during that period between 2015 and now. And I think one of the biggest things, if I'm totally honest, is that our business areas, and I'm going to call out the fact that Alison Rose is our CEO, the first sort of bank that's had a CEO of Alison Rose. Before she was a CEO, she was also head of our commercial, and my biggest business that brings apprentices in. Guess what it is? It's commercial. And so therefore that has been a brilliant move for us, because now suddenly you have someone in charge of the organization who absolutely buys into the apprenticeship concept. And not just gender, diversity as well, and you know, and I think that we've got 460 apprentices on our program now, of which 196 are female. So it's not half, but I think the majority of those, 61% of them, are in that sort of customer facing entry level type roles, and therefore, but we still have, you know, 47 of them in technology, digital data type roles, out of the 120 apprentices. So about, you know, 40% of our digital technology apprentices are female, which I think is pretty good.
Very good.
And how have we actually done that? Well, it's a combination of things, really. Is that when you first start any apprenticeship program, people talk about the benefits of it, etc. You need businesses who are going to buy into it, and I think we have the benefit of Alison Rose and a number of other our business areas going, actually, yeah, we really see the benefit of apprentices. In commercial that Alison was part of, predominantly male, you know, sort of relationship managers, corporate commercial area, you'd expect it to be, and it still is pretty much predominantly male. And I think, you know, we certainly saw that we needed to change that, and the vast majority of the apprentices we bring into commercial about 60% of the apprentices we bring into our commercial area are female. So I think we are seeing the results. How have we done that is probably the question. Well, I think that what we've done is that we have the advantages of financial organisation. We actually have roles that are predominantly female, so therefore it made our telephony centres, whether in our customer service roles, you know, we have a good proportion of individuals that are female anyway. So we've got a start point there, and we do offer our apprenticeships to our existing employees, and we do see a good number of females saying, actually, I've now got my job now. I want to go into technology. I want to go into commercial, and I can do it via an apprenticeship program. But they're already established in the culture of the organisation. So I think that has helped. I think once you start bringing the apprentice in, you've got advocates. So you've got females, you know, that are in the roles, that are doing the programs, that are role models. You know, we openly use them to promote our apprenticeship programs, and so I suppose it's people that apply for our programs can see individuals that look like them, and potentially they can then follow that. And then finally, we realised that putting our jobs on a website and getting thousands of applications and going through a process, a sort of process that doesn't differentiate between anybody, you know, and you get what you get at the end of it, doesn't really work. Because you're reliant on individuals making those recruitment decisions that potentially have bias, and therefore we need to do something differently. So 2 years ago, we created a social mobility program, which we ring-fenced 250 vacancies and went out to parts of the UK that had disadvantaged population, that social mobility aspect, and focused our digital and technology apprenticeships on that population. And we have seen that a real success. You know, we've seen a big proportion of individuals who openly would say, and one of our apprentices are on the call, who would openly say, until I spoke to the charity that help us, Leadership Through Sport and Business help us, I would never even thought of joining the bank, number one. No. And secondly, I would never even thought of joining the bank on a digital technology program for 4 years and get a degree. So you know, by putting it on your website isn't really going to tap into that population. So we have seen a real benefit from that. So it would be, you know, that would be my views.
Brilliant. Well, thanks, Mike. I mean, I think you've just given us a really, really extensive case study there of how to do it. But it struck me, you know, that a lot of what you kept coming back to was about that role modeling, starting right at the top, like you said, with Alison Rose. And I think, you know, it's some, as we said, sometimes I'm not saying it was simple for Alison to get there, by the way. I'm sure she's had to work very hard at her career to get to that job. But sometimes it's that simple turning, switching that light bulb on, as you just said, through the other program, of helping people see the art of what's possible, and then having people just genuinely see it's true, it's authentic. I can see someone like me in your organization, because that's what we mean when we talk about the lived experience, right? Can I see somebody who looks like me, is me, and can I see my future career? So I think it's great that you've given us that case study. I mean, quite interested just quickly to know, before I move on to bring in Christina, that 30% that you've got to over the last 5 years, what was the baseline? Where were you before? Do you know where you were at before you started measuring it?
I don't know, to be honest. I don't know that. No.
Okay, all right, but nonetheless, great work, great success. And I love that case study used at the end about going out into the community. We have a term for our US colleagues over here that you'll hear if you ever bother to listen to our Prime Minister, not that I'm suggesting you have to or should, he will often use a term called levelling up. You'll probably have your equivalent sort of term in the US, I'm sure, but what Mike's just described, rather than it being just about political term, is true levelling up, where we're going out into the communities and creating genuine equity for young people and people generally to have the opportunities that they need. And sometimes you do have to switch the equity card on, don't you? You know, you have to swing the pendulum so that you can actually make the right things happen. Thanks very much, Mike. Well, Christine, if I may, I'm going to come to you now from T-Mobile. I know that you're responsible for the apprenticeship programs in T-Mobile. And again, you've got a huge commitment to gender diversity. In fact, 41% of your employees are female and 32% are female executives. So really great, again, to hear. But be really interested to hear your view in terms of why you think it's been successful. What is it about your approach that you think has been successful?
Oh, thank you so much, Kirstie, and thank you to Franklin Apprentices for allowing me this opportunity to speak on this topic. It's so near and dear to my heart, as well as those of the others on this panel, I know. Well, I think it really just starts at the top, like we've discussed before. We could not have a better ally in Mike Siebert, our CEO. And that is really reflected in the numbers that you've just kind of shown. We have 32% female executives, which is, I mean, it's pretty amazing in this day and age. But, you know, we do have work to do. And as we always say at T-Mobile, we won't stop. I think what's really key is that we have significant C-suite representation. So that 30%, the 32% is also equally reflected in our C-suite. And that's really how that representation has shaped our executive landscape in a way that ultimately affects how we developed our mission and vision. And so bringing that back, those numbers, that 41% females, that 32% female executives, that really is reflected in our mission to be the best in the world at connecting our customers to their world and being #1 in customer choice and in customer hearts. And to be successful at that, I think there's a strong recognition that our workforce must accurately reflect our perspective from our customers. And that drives equity across the board.
Yeah.
And with that, yes, with that executive leadership and those women, as well as allies like Mike, are driving advocacy and education. And that is really where it all begins. So if I could sum up why we're successful, that, of course, the beginning, we have to have strong advocacy, and we do at that level. But we listen, we learn, and we act. What I mean when I say when we listen, we are consistently seeking feedback from our employees via our engagement surveys. And we very much take to heart the needs of our employees in all aspects of employment and engagement. We learn, we take a thoughtful approach to digesting that feedback. And through that feedback, we are consistently innovating and improving the way we source and market our postings, as well as take care of our internal employees. And then we act. You know, prior to the merger, both companies had employee resource groups. And since then, those groups have been really supercharged, right? We've really taken a lot of the best practices from both companies and merged them together. So specific to this topic, we have an employee resource group called Women and Allies Network. And basically their I guess mission statement is, or not mission, the vision is, we believe equal career opportunities for women means a better T-Mobile. And then the mission is to empower all women and allies to lead, grow, and use their voices to create an equitable workplace for women. I mean, it's really a wonderful space to discuss issues regarding women in leadership and career development, and to educate women on how best to brand themselves, how best to handle those microaggressions that we were talking about, and to educate allies on how to support women when they're facing those kind of microaggressions and adversity in the workplace. There are several different programs that we offer. The WAN, we call it WAN, W-A-N, Network Connections, which really is a safe place for women and allies to come in and have those kinds of conversations. We have a mentor match program that basically matches women to female executives to help them progress in their careers. And then we have, of course, Women in Technology. They have their own subgroup that really promotes women in technology. And as this relates to kind of how we source and how we bring folks into the organization, there is an active conversation happening around apprenticeships and how we might leverage or further leverage apprenticeships to bring in more gender diversity into our organizations.
Great.
We also have, returnships that bring folks into the organization, bring mainly women, female, into the organization that have had to take time off to take care, be caregivers, and to raise their families. So we have a lot of programs in place.
No, you can tell.
Really
well, look, I think you can see that there were people sort of giving you the virtual applause then when you were talking about your listen, act, learn. I think that, just from that case study as you described your experience in T-Mobile, you can tell you're really living it. And I think that is the point about everything we've heard from our panelists so far. It's about authenticity. People sniff through these days. If you're inauthentic, if you do something just because you're trying to get a tick in a box or get over a hurdle, people will just see through it. And we know more than ever, as we've come through the COVID pandemic, people are being far, far more choosy about how they spend their time in their work and their life, and therefore who they work for, the purpose of an organization, the mission and the commitment to these agendas is going to set you apart, as we're seeing in the examples that you're using. So thank you so much, Christina, for that perspective. I'm going to bring in Joanne if I can now, because I do want to have a bit of time just to cover some of the conversation that's been happening in chat before we move then to have a look at this conversation through the lens of the apprentices. So you'll get some chance to come back, all panelists, in a minute on the Q&A. But Joanne, thank you for joining us from Siemens. And of course, you head up professional education for UK and Northwest Europe. And I know that, again, another example where Siemens are working towards achieving gender parity across all your early years programs by 2025. So some common themes here, of course, but do you want to say a little bit more about the initiatives or actions that you're taking at Siemens on how you think you are being successful in turning this dial?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I think for us, the topic of equality, diversity and inclusion is one of our core company values. And that's really helped to strengthen our culture and leadership in driving the change. And we're doing this by using data to help identify areas of change to deliver equality in our business and attracting and recruiting the right talent internally and externally to help support that goal. And our leaders are really helping us to sort of challenge ourselves with these ambitious targets as well. We've primarily focused on gender in previous years. So being an engineering company, we have a population that's predominantly men in many of our businesses. So we've been working really hard to shift the dial on the gender balance in early careers through using women as role models in our marketing, adapting the wording and language that we use in our job adverts to appeal to more women, and adapting colour schemes, images of hard hats, factory floors, and working with external organisations to promote and target our vacancies. Whilst we noticed some marginal increases, it wasn't enough. So we set an initial target of 20% by 2020. And this was around 2016 when we had only 9% women on our apprenticeship programs. And it was about the same time, driven by the low numbers of women in STEM roles, that we launched our See Women programme to enhance our engagement in schools. We've been part of an external group in the UK called the Apprenticeship Diversity Champions Network, and that supports the government's commitment to championing diversity in apprenticeships. And we created a pledge in 2017 with this group and year-on-year aspirations and targets, so we could set ourselves different milestones, such as conscious and unconscious bias training, enhanced reporting analytics, and a virtual work experience programme, which specifically targeted and recorded participation by gender. By 2019, we achieved 20% target. So we evolved our See Women programme to See Me. So now it encompasses all of equality, diversity and inclusion, not just gender. And since then, really, we've just continued to champion this topic internally and externally and broaden it out to encompass, as you say, our target there to further stretch ourselves to 50% by 2025. And today we are currently at about 39% women across early careers, and 34% of those are in apprenticeships. And I think
Right.
what's been the most important initiatives or actions, I guess, that we've done to move the dial, I think having that diversity ingrained in our company values and having that strong leadership focus. I think it was mentioned before, but we've been focusing on this topic now for 5 years. So we've seen marginal but steady increments. So we just keep pushing ourselves further each year. I think being transparent with our data and setting ourselves challenging targets each year, and all the great things that we know work well, for example, the women role models, data transparency and target setting. And then we have a number of Siemens representatives on external groups now, sharing best practice and learning from others. And our See Women campaign that I mentioned briefly before, that launched in 2017, and that was a real turning point for us because it helped us to demonstrate our commitment to driving change in STEM as part of the school's engagement. So the show explored sort of women's groundbreaking contributions to the STEM and sort of challenging stereotypes on barriers with girls aged between 11 and 14. And these resources we created to encourage girls to revise and reflect upon their aspirations prior to taking their options at school so that they could fully consider their career choices. And we made these available to teachers and schools up and down the country and delivered live shows in 20 locations to nearly 4,000 students. So I mentioned there that it's now evolved. So that's See Me now, and it's also gone fully digital as well. So we've won a number of awards for that campaign, World Skills being one of them. So I think some of those have really helped to make us make a change for us. And I think getting that that external recognition, however big or small that may be, has really helped us to stay focused. And I think now we're just at a point where we're well outside the national average. So that next step,
Yes,
we're just looking at what we can do now to push it that bit further.
No, brilliant, and thank you very much for bringing in the young person's aspect of working with schools. Because I think that goes right back to a point Diana made right at the beginning about how early we have to start here challenging prejudices, and actually the employer is often the best place to do that. It's often not the teacher or the careers teacher, as important role as they play. It's actually employers coming in to the classroom in inverted commas, and as you say, people being able to see people who might be like me some point down the line in their career. So I think that's another excellent set of insights and case studies. Thank you. One of the things I'm just interested in quickly to explore, and we'll go into the chat, is obviously we've been talking about this through the lens of female gender and for women, but of course there is, I assume, a plus, possibly even a negative. I don't know if any of you experience any negative aspects from the male dimension in terms of, but because most of it, I'm coming at it's all been additive, it's all been great for the men as well, but has there been some tension? Any of you, just out of interest, very quickly, anything anyone's picked up on?
To be honest, certainly not from my experience. I think the organisation is the culture of the organisation, and it is that we treat everyone it doesn't really matter whatever element of that diversity lens you actually look through. It's the quality of the individual. That's what we look at.
Good. And is that the same for Diana, Christina, Joanne? Would you agree, or have you had other experiences or heard of other experiences?
So for us, I think it's it's quite supportive, and we've got some good male role models as well on these groups, and that, and pushing obviously why diversity is important for the organisation. So it's about that sort of parity more, really. And
yeah, brilliant, good. So Kim, I think you've been watching the chat a lot more than I've been able to. In fact, I think someone switched my chat function off somehow. Probably that's so that I don't start trying to do that as well. But I think we have got some questions coming in, haven't we? So we've probably got 2 or 3 minutes before we need to move on to the apprenticeship section.
Yeah, I mean, one of the questions is around the returnships. Like, this is a relatively new concept, which is picking up traction. So we'd love to hear more about that, similar to apprenticeships.
So who wants to give that a go? Christina, are you going to go?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, our returnship program is not an apprenticeship program, but I would also say that it is really tightly focused on those that have a wealth of experience that they have gained over the years, but had to take some time away from their careers to develop either take care of their families, take care of having elder care issues, all of those kinds of things, but bringing them back into an organization. And I guess it's more of a reskilling and upskilling effort instead of starting from the ground up. So they have a base of knowledge. And then, you know, like for software developers, our returnship is focused on the software development area. So we take the knowledge that they had previously, and then we upskill them and reskill them to fit the needs of our organization. And then they come into our organization, and they're wonderful contributors to our culture and to T-Mobile. So we do partner with an outside organization on that. I'm not sure who, but we do that because, of course, we're not experts in software development.
Right. So, Kim, have we got time for another couple at most?
Yeah, like, what do you guys think about the role of the targets and quotas? And have you seen any examples of where that's gone wrong? Have there been negative reactions to setting these targets?
I could probably cover that a little bit. Is that we certainly have a gender and a ethnicity targets, but certainly when we did we continue with our social mobility program, we realized the high level targets, we really need to look at what the populations are like in those particular locations. So in the UK, Edinburgh is totally different to Manchester and London, for example. So therefore, I think targets are great at a high level, but I think you do need to look at, well, what are the actual target populations in those particular locations, and not be driven to try and get 30% ethnicity, or, you know, sort of split in an area where actually it's only 5% in the population. And I think we've maybe learned from that, because we were reporting it and everyone was asking, well, why are you not hitting this? I said, well, because, you know, there isn't that opportunity. So I do think targets need to match the actual community that you're going into.
Great, thanks, Mike. And Kim, have we got time for one more?
We do not.
Right, okay, well, there we go. That's my time check. Well, listen, thank you so much, everybody. I think a massive round of applause virtually there for Christina, Mike, Joanne, and Diana. And of course, as I say, there's going to be an opportunity when we get into the breakouts to talk more about all those fantastic insights and thoughts and comments you've given us. So thank you so much indeed. We're going to move on now very quickly and swiftly to the last part. It's a shorter panel, but as I said before, I don't think you can have a conversation about apprentices without having apprentices join us. So I'm absolutely delighted that we've got Jade, Seema, and Megan joining us. So I'm just going to bring you on. So if you can turn your cameras, and we'll get into a quick conversation with each of you. I'm going to come, I think, first to yeah, there we go. Great. You've got your camera on now. Thank you. I'm going to come first, if I may, to Seema. And of course, you're working with NatWest. So your experience has been as an apprentice with NatWest, where we heard from Mike, technically your boss earlier. I assume he's a nice guy. He's a nice boss, right? You have to say that. But I'm sure he is. No, I do know Mike. I know he is. But I mean, joking apart, I mean, what's your perception on why you think it's difficult to get more young women to come into fields like technology and finance?
Thank you for inviting me today, first of all.
I'd
say the main thing that puts women off, from my experience, is because it's other women to an extent. I found that when I was going into, so before this I was at university, I was studying politics, and I found that as soon as I said to my family, you know, I'm going to go into a tech role in an apprenticeship, they said to me, oh, are you sure? It's engineering, there's loads of boys, can't you find something that girls like to do? I had this from quite a few female family members, and I thought that's quite interesting, because women do tend to kind of make you feel like it's not going to be a great experience if you go and work with men. Of course, at the end of the day, a lot of men, I haven't experienced this at NatWest, I've had a really great experience, I just want to put that out there, but a lot of people that I have heard from, they say that a lot of men will probably give you more PA roles if you do end up in an engineering role, that either way, they end up giving you jobs that are a lot more sexist and a lot more fitting to the stereotype of what women can do. But that being said, the main thing from my experience is other girls, they really do put you down for working around men.
That's really interesting. That is interesting. But we're back to that role model point again, though, aren't we? Where because they as women haven't had their role models, it becomes a vicious circle. So it just becomes and people are often, in inverted commas, frightened of what they don't know. But it's a great point, because I don't think we'd probably thought about it just even through that immediate angle of even people in your own family who can be such big advocates or role models, or equally, as you've just said yourself, your own experience possibly even tried to put you off. But I assume they're super proud now, right? And really glad that you've gone. Yeah, exactly.
They've got their kids trying to apply for the next year's apprentice. I'm not
Well,
helping
there you
them.
go. Well, there you go. That's what's called that's brilliant. I mean, that's what's called the ripple effect, right? Because then you're actually starting to create that ripple in the pond, and more people will come and join. So that's really good. Just very quickly, if there was one thing you could have changed about your experience, or you would like, future employers who are listening right now to think about when they're looking to, recruit particularly women into these sorts of roles, what would it be? What do you think it would be?
I think in the boot camp, so I came through Leadership Through Sports and Business, which was an external organization working with NatWest. We had, in the whole boot camp, there was about 16 boys and just 4 girls.
Right.
And that being said, it is very difficult to employ girls into a system where they're not applying to. It is very difficult, but a lot more effort to actually get girls to apply, even though they might not have the skill set. I came from a background of politics. I had no tech knowledge, but at the end of the day, I was one of the 5 people that were selected to do this role because NatWest saw that I had the potential for it. So rather than seeing women's current skills, because they might not have it, no one facilitating it, but to see the potential they have and the application they can make.
Do you know, that is such a brilliant point, and that's true for everybody. That so many times employers are looking for someone to be the perfect employee, have all of the technical skills, but actually it often comes down to the aptitude and seeing the opportunity and the potential. I think you've made some brilliant points there. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm going to move now, if I may, to Megan, and Megan from Siemens, and we've obviously just been hearing from Siemens as well, from Joanne, so thanks for joining us again, Megan. I mean, similarly, really, I guess, what's been your experience? I'm assuming it's been a relatively positive one, but as you look at the situation, and and how do we get more and more young women into that more non-traditional sectors, what would you say has been your experience, and what would you like to see done differently?
Yeah, thank you. I've had a really, really positive experience with Siemens, but I think overall, if we look at the issue, like we've talked a lot about this massive barrier that women face already, and that is the case, but I think we haven't really taken into consideration when we're looking at apprenticeships. A lot of the time, but not all the time, there are young people going for these jobs. They're right at the beginning of their careers. They haven't got a lot of experience, and they may already have a lot of sort of self-doubt, nervousness, things like that. And if you then put that together with this barrier that we have getting women in already into sort of STEM and finance careers, it just kind of amplifies it. And I think it's very understandable that young women might get put off by that, and it's sad, but it is completely understandable from my view that you might just want to play it safe and go into a different industry that's not maybe as daunting to them.
No, I think it's a really good point. I mean, it goes back really to the conversation we've just been having with Simon, that people often will do something out of fear, and as you say, just fall back on things that are safe. But the more people who become role models, the more you can break down those barriers. But do you find, is there a cohort of you inside Siemens of young women who are starting out your career there, who then tend to talk with each other, and do you find that happens, or are you sort of working much more in silos?
Yeah, no, definitely. I think one thing Siemens have been really good with is making it very inclusive from the start. So when we first started our year of apprentices, there was about 30 of us across the company. And they made sure that we were all introduced to each other. We went on a sort of a kind of group holiday. It was a little bit like a residential trip, but it was amazing. It gave us a chance to meet each other. And in terms of meeting other women who were in similar roles to you, there was loads of girls there that I felt that I could chat to, and are very good friends of mine now. So it's lovely, really.
Well, it's brilliant. And as I saw something flash up earlier in the chat, what's happening there is you're creating these communities that will go on for several generations ahead to kind of build that momentum. So very, very well done. And thank you for being part of that. And Jade, I'm going to come to you now, if I may. And actually, it's great because obviously Megan and Simon have been as apprentices, whereas you're a pre-apprenticeship. In fact, you've been working with Franklin through Franklin successfully and completed your IBM Z apprenticeship program. So very, very well done. But of course, that means you're actively on the market, right? So I assume. So let's see if we can do some good for you there. But joking apart, I mean, you know, you'll have had, I assume, some similar experiences to what you've been hearing your colleagues and peers talk about here. Do you want to say a little bit more as to what your experience has been, Jade?
Yeah, sure. Well, yeah, thank you for having me. You know, I would definitely say that, you know, just general exposure to the opportunities themselves. You know, I learned about this through LinkedIn, through Sudarshana, who is actually works for IBM, and she's a PMP and an influencer manager. And so just having you know, platforms that kind of create community and are encouraging, and to have people out there who look like you is wonderful, especially, you know, during the pre-apprenticeship when, you know, that can be one of the most exciting times, but you're also kind of lost, you know, in some ways. So having these communities, I think, you know, I think everyone has talked about advocacy, ambassadors, and allies, and I think that's really important.
Brilliant. And I suppose what's your next step then? Where are you looking to head next then, Jade?
I am looking for some good enterprise experience. So I just came off of 3 interviews last week.
Well
Franklin's been great at facilitating those. And so I'm just waiting for the offers.
And if you don't want to, and very best of luck, I'm sure you're going to be successful, whatever comes of those 3 interviews or any others that you have. But out of interest, I mean, do you feel as you go into those interviews, do you feel, because you are a woman going into jobs that ordinarily men would have maybe been favoured potentially, do you feel at a disadvantage, or do you feel that that isn't the case? You're not feeling disadvantaged anymore? I mean, where would you stand on that?
That's a really good question. I mean, I would say, like, even during the interviews, I would probably say that most of the interviews were with men. I feel like I don't know if this just could be like an enterprise thing or a corporate thing, but I do feel like the delivery and the approach is a little bit different. And so it might just take some getting used to, you know, in that space, just kind of, and you know, and I guess back to, I think Mike mentioned the culture. And so when, you know, diversity is built into the culture, then, you know, it might be, I don't know if that's just a me thing, but in some ways I did feel like, you know, either the way that things were communicated might have been a little bit different, but I don't feel disadvantaged at all.
No.
I have great support, great mentors, a great community. So all of those things, I mean, you know, I'm backed up.
Brilliant. Well, that's great to hear, Jade. And I did see a message flash up from somebody in the chat say, come over to the UK and work at IBM in the UK, I think they were saying. So there you go. So I told you we'd help you out on this call. So there you got it. But, you know, yes, there you go. It was Kashif. So thank you for that. So listen, great conversation. I don't want to eat into Kim's setup for the panel. I just think it was really important to hear from, you know, the experiences of you 3 who have been going through and gone through your own successful journeys, but had to work at it because of the very nature of gender, because unfortunately that's just the way it is, even though it shouldn't be. So I'd just like to kind of finish asking each of you, just in literally 10 seconds, if you had a magic wand, as a woman now, and you are powerful woman doing your thing in your area, what would it be? What would you do? That one thing. Simon, what would you do?
That is such a difficult question. There's a lot of things I'd do, but I think definitely encourage young girls at school in their IT lessons to not just sit around and play with each other's hairs. Just
that's a great one.
Play with the computer.
Yeah, play with the computer, take it seriously. Brilliant, thank you. Not give up, really, I think is what you're saying. Not think that it's not for me, so I'm just going to give up. Brilliant. Megan, to you.
I would pretty much say the same, but I'd sort of call out to people that are recruiting that are on the call and say, like, get people from your business, get apprentices in your business that you've got already, get them out into schools and let young children and young girls see who they've got in at the moment, because it really does change their mindset and help inspire them.
Brilliant. No, thanks, Megan. And Jade, we'll give the last word to you.
Yes, just have more boots on the ground. Get out there in those platforms, LinkedIn and Discord and Twitch, and just talk to people, engage.
Yeah, create that movement, make those ripples happen, and it will happen. That's brilliant. Well, listen, thank you so much, Megan, Jade, and Seema, for coming in and giving us that energy, sharing your experiences. Thanks again to our panel before. I think, Kim, that's going to set you up tremendously well for the next hour, where we're going to get deeper into some of these themes, debate them, and have more opportunity to explore some of the great ideas we've heard, as well as some of the challenges and barriers, because it isn't all still hunky-dory, right? There's still a lot more that we know we need to do. And if I think they're the big things that I'm taking away from this first part of the session is, the importance of role modeling and advocacy, that commitment at the top. I mean, almost every example we heard, it was coming from the top. So it's got to be top down, and then it starts to work back up, bottom up, see people like me in the organization, and make sure it's part of the mission, and then measure it. So I think there's something about measurement coming out as well in the conversation we've had in that first hour. So brilliant. So thank you, everybody. And Kim, over to you now.
Great. What a terrific conversation. And I love that each of the apprentices and pre-apprentices are ambassadors. That's how we're going to grow it here in the US. I know you guys do a lot of that in the UK, but well done. Really great conversation. We are going to move into some breakout rooms now. They're going to be hosted by Franklin Success Coaches. We've got Cable, Tim, and Britt who are going to be leading the discussion. For those of you who don't know, Success Coaches are a critical part of Franklin's model. They're there to support the pre-apprentices, apprentices, apprentice employers throughout the entire journey. So I'm really excited that you get to see them in action. The goal for the breakouts is going to be to provide an opportunity for everybody to share what they're doing. Let's explore some ways to take some actions to improve gender diversity in apprenticeships. So the facilitators are going to kick off with a few questions, and then we'll huddle back and just provide a quick summary before we wrap up for the day. So with that, we'll see you in your breakout rooms.
Hello, welcome back. Wherever you were zoomed in and out of, whichever room you found yourself in. We'll just wait for everybody to start coming back in. Hi, Kim.
Hi there.
Did you have a good experience?
We had a fantastic conversation. I hope that everybody, the other groups did as well. I'm sure they did. We are getting close to the end here, but I was hoping to go around and have each of the facilitators just give a brief overview so we can hear some of the other points that were made. And why don't we start with Britt?
Hi, nice to meet all of you. I'm so grateful to be a part of this conversation, and I really feel like this is such a beautiful start. And one of the biggest, I think, takeaway points, and I'm going to lean on Mike to fill in he was helping, I was having some bandwidth issues, but one of the big takeaways for us is what's working is the role models, having strong, positive female role models that can start even in lower education, just having the opportunity to teach women, change systemically the viewpoint of women can do these types of jobs. So that's what's working for us. What's not working, it seems like there's just not enough education. Really contributing to lack of confidence in women feeling like they can fulfill these roles. It also seems as if that lack of education is not supporting our language. We could send in interviews, we could have more really be a strong place for us to start. Mike, if you have anything to add, anything I'm missing, I would love for you to help me pick up.
Yeah, that theme of role models really rippled throughout our entire conversation. That part of the issue is getting women the confidence necessary to take the classes when they're young, to get into these roles, and to have individuals from either business or apprentices coming in and speaking to individuals to get them to feel comfortable. And at the very end, we came up with a great idea organizations that have apprenticeship programs is to have an advocacy program, so that new apprenticeship members can see someone that's been there for 20 years and been successful in that role. The theme ended up being, let's give them the confidence that I should be doing this, that I can be doing this. Jade mentioned in her session that the interviews that she was part of were, she didn't see herself. Well, let's have interview panels represent the apprentices, so they feel like I can see myself in this role. And that sort of permeated every question throughout our breakout sessions. And Andy, I don't know if you had any additional feedback as well.
I was just going to put one last point in there, and I think it was Emma who raised advocacy, but actually I think it was advocacy. It's all about getting somebody in the room, and for me, there's almost an additional spin that I would just finish on with that, and that is, let's try and, as employers, our groups, and communicate to others, rather than trying to test candidates and seeing if they pass. Why don't we be advocates for them and try and help them to succeed? We too often look for where we can catch them out rather than really help them show their best. And I think that's where an advocate could really make a difference, and maybe get an advocate on the interview panels.
I'll add one last thing. We tried to create a theme of walkaways. Could we come up with some tips or things that we could do and share with other organizations that would help? One idea that came up was the actual job description itself. Make sure that the words that you're using are inclusive, to make everyone feel like you could apply for this job, that it's somehow not male dominated. So be very careful in how you word your job applications to make sure anybody feels like they could apply.
Those are terrific points, guys. Really great. Cable, you want to share?
Thank you, Kirstie and Kim, for the breakout. Was fantastic. Myself and Jackie, we had a really great group, very, very, very vocal. We had a lot of conversation. One of the biggest things, Simo was with us. She had mentioned that earlier, getting to a younger audience, getting to our females earlier and what that looks like. But I want to give a shout out to Diana. She really helped put things in perspective. We're probably all like-minded and open-minded to the fact that we would like to include gender and diversity, but she also said there's a lot of organizations out there that do not. And so we had a conversation about what that looks like. And one of the big takeaways were, and Mike made a good point, I think that cultures of organizations that do have this are going to be very successful as we move forward. And the ones that do not, the ones that are male dominated, that stay in their settings, that stay in their mindsets, are probably going to have a lesser pool of people to come on board. We talked about things that were important to people in this day and age. Money isn't necessarily the first thing that brings people on. It's, do they align with their values? Is a healthy culture? Are they included? Those kind of things is what we really discussed about in our group. And I didn't know if Jackie had anything else to add to that, but it was a very, very good conversation.
Apologies. We had a great group, and people with lots of experience in apprenticeships. And one of the things that was interesting to me was to get the different perspectives on how you get the whole organization behind it, and how you bring hiring managers along to embrace the idea of hiring people for what they can do, and are they trainable, and are they interested, versus what have they done in the past. So yes, it was, I again, thank you to all that were in our group. It was very helpful to those of us that are carrying the flag here in the US and looking to grow apprenticeships to have the same impact on our labor force that they do in the UK.
Great, thanks guys. Tim?
Yes, ma'am. We had a really kind of not too different conversation. We had a really, really good conversation that went all over the place, but a lot of the same topics. Christina has shared with T-Mobile. I think they're doing a great job. They have a very good program in place. And one of the key focal points was their training. They said, she had mentioned it's a 5-year process when they talk about this type of training to deal with gender diversity. And one of the things is not just the knowledge base, but then going out and actually applying it and doing different activities, because she had mentioned that you could learn something and forget it right away, but if you're encouraging your employees to go out and actually practice it. That was the big thing. One key phrase that kicked it off was a lot of the companies are viewing their employees as customers. So it changes the mindset internally of if you're a business, your whole goal is to satisfy your customer and make that your number one priority. So the viewpoint of now our employees are customers creates a new, open, adaptive mindset into new ways of thinking and changing. Role models was a high topic volume there. Creating role models up higher in the chain and then down. We'd have ambassadors and key roles pushing for these types of new thinking, new mindset. So the whole idea is you get these role models and ambassadors to promote these ideas and these changes, and then it becomes just common knowledge inside the organization. It creates a new value set. It creates a new mindset. And you go through this change process. We did talk about various change processes and resistance of you get into Johari's window of blind spots. You're unaware of your thinking or your actions because that's just the way you've operated, and creating an environment to open up conversations to identify those blind spots. And then now to that person is no longer blind and they can actually take action and fix their way of thinking or behaving. And then Danny introduced a couple books. I already have it in my Amazon cart, Crucial Conversations to open up a mindset of and practice of new ways of thinking and providing conversations into not just this, but a variety of areas. So, but the biggest takeaway was the training, breaking down those barriers and the walls. We did have a very diverse group because we did have 2 apprentices in our group that we were able to go from employer to employee and all the way up and down the chain there to say, hey, one of the things was assumptions going into the hiring process or their interviewing process was, if I'm a female, will I get a job because I'm going into a male dominant? And then there's a lot of roadblocks along the way. So how do we break down those assumptions from both sides, the employer and the employee? So very, very good all around conversation. I wish we had another 45 minutes, but Kim, anything else that you wanted to add to that?
No, I think you did a great job, Tim. Thank you. I mean, this was just a fantastic couple of hours, and we really appreciate everybody joining and sharing your thoughts. Mickey, we're going to pull together some feedback and share it out with the team. And
so yeah, the goal is 5 actionable insights. So we'll be compiling all the notes and then we'll share it back around.
Great. So Kim, have we had the feedback now from all the sessions? All the
we have.
Brilliant, coaches, brilliant. Well, look, I mean, I think you'll have seen in the chat we've already put a survey in there, because the reason we were able to put this session on, and I hope and thank you for everybody's engagement, it was because we got such good feedback and some direction, wasn't it, Kim, from the last one? So we'd like the same again. I mean, I made that plug right at the beginning that because of this partnership with Franklin, we get 2 bites at Apprenticeship Week. We've got the US bite, and then we've got the bite when we come to do the one in the UK in February. So it'd be great to be thinking about using the Apprenticeship Week that will happen over in the UK in February as another opportunity to think about hosting another one of these 2 sides of the pond lenses at looking at this important topic of apprenticeship. So please do give your feedback. I know we've had you now on Zoom for nearly 2 hours, but I hope it's gone. I think it's gone very quickly because of the great inputs and insights we've had from all of you in the session in the last hour, but also of course from our excellent speakers and obviously the apprentices themselves. So I mean, I think for me this role model, this advocacy has just been a consistent theme, right, hasn't it, through everything we've talked about today. I think it was one of our apprentices, wasn't it, that said advocacy, ambassadors and allies. I think Andy, you coined it as the 3 A's. I think that's probably going to, that's what you always take away, things that stick in you become like a bit of an ear worm, and I think that's going to be in a very positive way, my earworm: advocacy, ambassadors and allies. Because I think, and in a way that's what we're acting as, right, is this group of people who have just tried to, through the work that Franklin and City Girls are just starting to explore together for all the right reasons, is just trying to create that advocacy, trying to be ambassadorial and trying to collaborate as allies on both sides, as I say, of the pond, because we recognise that apprenticeships and skills is a global issue. and it's something that for decades to come, we may even get to a place where we do have apprentices coming from one side of the pond to the other. And wouldn't that be amazing if we can create those opportunities? So thank you so much. I hope it's been, thank you for the feedback in the chat there. Hope it has been a good event. Please do give us your honest feedback, because only by doing that, as we heard today in the sessions we talked about, it's only when we listen to our feedback do we learn, and we can move on to make the next session even better than this wonderful one. So safe, I was going to say safe home, but of course most of us are home, but safe on to whatever you're doing next on your Zoom meetings, for those of you who've still got the day to go, those of us joining from the UK and nearly at the back end of our day. So it's been lovely to see all our colleagues and friends again, as well as some of you new people who've joined us for this second webinar. And as I said, I think Kim and I will look forward to welcoming you to a third one at some point in the new calendar year. So stay well, stay successful. Good luck to all of our apprentices we heard from today. And thank you everybody for joining in this really important conversation.